All right, let's talk about the common issues on the L48. I would say there's a couple common issues on these, not a lot, and there's really nothing major at all on these that I've ever seen. The most common issue that I see is the tie rods, the tie rod ends. So these guys right here, those are new on this one, and every time you see one of these, those are always just really sloppy. To the point where they look like they're gonna just fall apart. So those are probably the most common thing is the sloppy tie rod on the front end steering, right? So that's the probably number one thing on the L48. The second big thing on these is the hydrostatic pedal. So there's a bunch of bushings in here in this mechanism on the pedal. They're always sloppy. So there's some softer bushings in there and some pins. The pin is usually worn, and the bushings are usually worn as well. So that's the second most common thing is the bushings and pins. This one has all new bushings and pins on it, so it's factory. You know, it's tight. It's just as tight as it was when it was brand new. But when you get these, this pedal usually flops around quite a bit, and that's just because it's got some bushings that are bad and or a pin. The cost on all this stuff is minor. I want to say all the bushings and the pin for the hydrostatic pedal, you're probably less than 100 for all that. And then for the tie rod ends in front, don't go after the ones that Kubota sells. They get about 200 for each one. There's a good aftermarket company, or several aftermarket companies for parts for tractors. They make a decent tie rod. I want to say they were maybe $80 each. So for $150 versus $400, you go with the aftermarket tie rods versus the Kubota ones. They'll be just as good, and they all wear out. They all wear out because the front end on this is just so heavy. When you've got the loader loaded up with 3,000 pounds of material, it's just a lot for the tie rods. So not bad. 150 on tie rod ends, and then $100 on bushings. The other big thing on these is the floor mat. The floor mat is usually gone. This floor mat is new on this one. It costs about $175 from Kubota. I would just pay the money and get the right one from the website, Kubota website. They sell these for $175. Just pay it, and get the right one, because if you don't, this is all over the place. It'll be curled up, you'll be tripping on it, it'll be just a pain. So that one's new, and it's a brand new one, so it looks obviously good. The other things I can think of, I would say the other things are probably the lights on it, the factory lights on these. This one's got the aftermarket LEDs, and the factory ones, just like the L35, they're kind of clumsy. The switch area, the switch mechanism inside the light, so those usually tend to go. But other than that, there's really nothing else that's going to be common issue type stuff, and those are all minor things in my mind. There's nothing major on this machine. There's no issues with the drivetrain. There's no issues with the engines. Nothing like that. All the hydraulics there's no issues with any of that stuff. There's no issues with the rods or the fittings or the bushings. The bushings last, they don't wear out. All the grease fittings are made of quality steel, so they don't rust. So you've got no issues anywhere other than the ones I just mentioned that I know of. And honestly, you may not have some of those issues either if you've taken care of it and you've kept it inside a barn or inside a garage its entire life. It may not even have some of those issues. So definitely a good machine. If you're thinking of getting one, definitely recommend it. I don't want to discourage you from that. Those are very minor things in my mind, and that's my list.